Welcome to Hypnotic Authenticity. My name is Chris. I'm a practical, grounded hypnotherapist. I'm based in Switzerland, and this is a space that I have created to foster a genuine sense of inner settling. A place to harmonize with yourself and bring about the improvements to your well-being that, I don't know, maybe perhaps you thought were literally impossible. So my episodes are an invitation to reconnect with all that is alive inside you, to examine the stories that you live your life by, and to maybe soften the edges of what it is that you believe yourself to be in order to create a bigger, broader, more expansive sense of your personal agency and your personal understanding. So I'm going to be talking about identity, about existence, about self-resonance, self-harmony, about authenticity. And that'll all be wrapped up with a sprinkling of hypnosis or guided meditation to help you settle, to help you align and return to yourself. So if you're ready, take a breath and let's begin.
Who am I? Who am I behind the veil? That's what I'm going to attempt to guide you towards today. So in order to do this, we're going to have to go straight back to first principles. Epictetus, Rufus, Marcus Aurelius. Who am I? When am I? What am I? I mean, the idea of discovering your true self is that you're kind of lifting the veil as if the part of you which is talking isn't really you. So maybe instead of finding the true self, maybe it might be a little bit easier to at least begin with the goal of, well, let's find a truer self. And in order to do that, you need to start on the basis of deconstructing the dominant voice inside of you, the one which pretends to be you, the one that sounds like it's running this ship. So you need to look into psychological illusions. You need to look into the things that feel like you, that you're labeling as you, but that in actual fact are not you. Which means deconstructing a thought. We don't actually choose our thoughts. Well, we never asked for them. They just appeared, then we noticed them, then we attach significance to them or not. So if you want to find your true self, one of the most illuminating ways to begin with is when a thought comes up and immediately you kind of feel as if you want to take credit for it. Instead, just notice that the thought has come up and start to question. Okay, so in the thought, when am I? When am I? When is that thought? Is it now? Because most of the time, in actual fact, our thoughts are either about the future or about the past. If it is, it's a projection, yeah? It's a construct. It's not an experience of you. It's not a commentary upon your moment-to-moment experience. Instead, it is a projection about the future, or it is a reflection upon the past. You might also want to say, when you notice the thought and it feels like you, where am I? Because very often indeed, you're not here, wherever here is. You're somewhere else. Then, of course, the big one is, who is doing the thinking? Who am I in the thought? Because the thought has a voice, but there is somebody observing the thinker. So that can't be you, because you're observing the thinker. And the thought wasn't your choice. The thought just appeared, and then you noticed it. And then you notice that the viewer of the thinker also exists. The viewer of the thinker also exists. And so on, and so on, and so on. So when you think that you're lifting the veil, you can deconstruct what it feels like to be that chattering part of your voice. You can even review and destroy the conclusions that you have come to about the thought. You can go to the point of following the thought back as far as you can go, but you just get to a sort of a primordial soup, and then it appears in your awareness. However, what can be much more illuminating is not so much the thought. So imagine that the thought, whether the thought is good or bad or indifferent, whether the thought is about fear or fun, anything at all, the thought is always made of the same stuff. Yeah, the thought is made of electrical impulses. It's perhaps made of feelings that are noticed in the body as well. Maybe you want to extend the concept of thought down to feeling. But all of that, no matter whether the thought is one which is appealing or unappealing, is kind of made of the same stuff. So it's not so much the thought. The thought is kind of neutral. The interesting thing is the way that you choose to label the thought. And that is based on two things. Right? That is based around your fixed ideas, the way that you customarily label things, and it's based around your expectation of how you should be thinking or feeling, based upon a set of circumstances as to your current experience. And where do they come from? So they come from every event that's ever occurred in your past. They come from all the conclusions that you've ever drawn, all the way back to your moment of birth, maybe even before birth, maybe to the first moment of what you might want to consider basic consciousness in the womb. You have been drawing conclusions. So is that you? But that has been made from a series of staccato events. Consider your birth an event, your conception an event, your first mouthful of food an event, your first girlfriend or boyfriend an event, first day at school an event, first time you were laughed at an event, the first time you were congratulated an event. Moment after moment, after moment after moment of transitory events to which you come to conclusions about what it is to be you, about your skills, about your weaknesses, about your likes and your dislikes, about things that hurt and things that make you happy. So all of those conclusions came through a series of chance events that transpired in a way that produced the course of your life. To the point where you end up today with something that feels like you. It sounds like you, but it's been constructed. So what's the point of all that? The point of all that is to say that the thought process that you currently have that feels like you, well, is not necessarily correct. It might be partially correct. It might be wholly correct. But the likelihood is that it's a pale imitation on the truth, a half-baked rule of thumb using maybe 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points of reference to come to a conclusion, whereas the truth is far, far more complicated. When you do that, then you're starting to strip away the layers of the onion. You're trying to lift the veil on what it is that you consider to be you, that what it is that you consider to be your place in the world, and what it is that you consider to be the reality in which you inhabit. So everything is open to question, which is why we end up with Epicurus and Marcus Aurelius and Titus Rufus and so on. Because the more you question, it turns out the less you know. But there's something tremendously freeing about that. So as you go back, you peel away the layer, you see another layer behind, you see another self, another self, another self. You can follow your feelings, you can come to understand the way that you feel the way you're currently feeling. You can come to reason why that is the case, looking back upon your history. But you can get to a point eventually where you start to see the self behind that as a less certain, more naive, but more pure you. Maybe you want to call that the soul, maybe you want to call that the inner child, the infant soul, the blank slate upon which you start to create your stories. But the problem with all of it, is that we live within the stories that we have created. So as much as we might want to stare back and stare from behind the veil, we are, since the moment that we existed and became conscient, living within that story of what it is that we think we are. And so in order to take a step behind that would have to be to take a step outside of our entire existence. So I think the wonderful thing about discovering the truer self, let's say, is that you end up coming to the conclusion that the question is an oxymoron, that the thinker cannot question themselves to the point that an answer is relevant because they are trapped within the story, within the confines of the fixed ideas by which they are considering the answer, and that even the answer has to hang within the hooks of the understanding of reality. And so we are trapped where we are. We can deconstruct what we are. We can come to the conclusion that what we think we know, we don't know. We can come to the conclusion that our thoughts are unpredictable, that we are an organism, that you know, whatever happens, happens, that we're simply here to make the best of it. But we can't step outside of the system. The nice thing about that, of course, is that having come to that conclusion, you then free yourself. And the funny thing about freeing yourself, when things matter less, when you can relativize more, well, is that then you can start to play and experiment. And funnily enough, by not thinking about it, by not trying so hard, you kind of discover a different type of truer self. I don't know if it's a real truer self, but rather than a thinking self, it is a being self. And to me, that's closer to something which is important, let's say. Because why are we looking for the true self in the first place, okay? We're looking for a sense of inner truth, right? Inner reasoning. What is my place on earth? What am I? How do I face my death? What is it to be a good individual? What is it to fulfill my destiny? What is it to fulfill my place in the world? You know, that is what is driving the query underneath of what is my true self. So if we deconstruct the idea of, well, actually the question is wrong, well then what is the better question? And for me the better question is, how do you live a good life? How do you live a virtuous life? How do you live what the Stoics would consider to be important, you know? And that's not to say that you don't pursue goals. Of course, pleasure comes from achievement as well as comes from community. So everything that you potentially can think could potentially be of importance to you. But you get to the point of throwing away the slings and arrows of reality and instead focusing upon the balance between your head and your heart, your intuition and your thinking, critical, judgmental mind, and coming to conclusions about what is important to you. What are your core values? What are your delusions? What are your emotional crutches? What are the messages that underlie the emotions that you are aware of, and also the ones that you push away from? And what does that all mean for your existence, for your happiness, for the way that you will work with other people, the way that you relate to yourself, your ability to find peace inside of yourself, your ability to reconcile yourself with everything that you are unable to change, as well as what you are potentially able to change, and how you make your way in the world as a result of all of that. So I think it's useful to consider your true self. It's useful to consider that what you think you know, you don't know. But ultimately, you get to the point where it doesn't really matter. But I hope that can help you, yeah? Start with the idea of deconstructing what you think is you. Start with, when the thought appears, well, where did that thought appear from? Did I choose that thought? Is it even me that's speaking, you know? Where does that thought lead me to? Or where does that feeling lead me to? Who is the voice? When is the voice? Where is the voice that is speaking that? Is it with me? Is it detached? Is it elsewhere? You can get to the point where the only thing you're sure about is that you're not really sure. But that gives you the freedom to then start experimenting. And then what happens is, once you experiment, you start to notice the things where you feel in flow. You start to notice the things where you feel right. You might not even be able to put words upon it, but you know that somehow this feels innocently like you, a little bit like when a painter might be painting his absolute life masterpiece, and he almost forgets himself and becomes one with the piece of art. Once you can relinquish that chattering part of your mind, then you're freeing yourself to start experiencing that. And I think it is that which is getting you closer towards, you know, what some people might call the inner child, the soul, the self behind the self, whatever it may be. Complicated subject.
Thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If it resonates with you, then follow my podcast. I would also personally be really grateful if you might wish to leave a quick rating. It genuinely helps others to discover the podcast. If you personally would like more guided meditations, you want some deeper insights, you'll find all my links in the description. If you prefer a more visual boost, then you might want to check out my YouTube channel called Authentic Life Hypnosis. And if you're looking to do some deeper work that goes beyond one-way audio, then obviously you're very welcome to reach out. Equally, if you have any questions, I'm here to help. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.